welcome everybody to the 102nd edition of the Reinvention virtual chat.
Very nice.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? For those who don't know, who are listening in or joining for the first time, I'm Kathi Sharpe-Ross. I am the CEO of the SHARPE Alliance. I'm also the author of this amazing book, Reinvent Your Life, What Are You Waiting For? I launched this book in March of last year, which was the very beginning of the pandemic. And because I had to put all of my book launch events on hold, I created the virtual chat, which, as I said, we are now in the 102nd episode and have interviewed some of the most amazing people through this journey, told incredible stories, had a little business therapy, a little personal therapy. And I'm here to tell you that you are entitled to live the life that you want. How you get there, how you figure out what it is that you want is a whole other story. But hopefully through these conversations, these interviews, my podcast that launched in January called The Power of Reinvention, the book, you will pick up tips and tricks and ideas and see that lots of people go through the things that we all go through. And when we can share and be inspired and just kind of dig into it ourselves and give ourselves the permission and the space to not only listen to ourselves, but actually to dream the impossible dream, that maybe it's not that impossible after all. So today's topic is got a lot to do with money. And money seems to often be the center of so many excuses that people have for not getting something done. So in this particular instance, I am going to read from chapter 11, which is called, If It Wasn't for Money, I'd ... So I'm going to do a little reading, and then I'm going to officially introduce my guest, Rebecca Wiener McGregor, and share a little background on Rebecca. But I'm going to start with a little reading from this chapter. The second biggest excuse people use when considering a major change in their life right after time is money. The excuses I hear most frequently from friends include, I can't afford that trip, to take time off work, to lose that client, to make more time for myself, a career change, especially at my age. They say, Kathi, I love your reinvention talk, but fulfillment doesn't pay the bills. We, as human beings, are engineered to think this way. We live from a lack mentality, perpetually believing that if we use what money we have, we will never be able to make more money, contrary to years or decades of seeing the contrary. We are our own biggest obstacles to better, more joyous, more satisfying lives. One of the most important things you can do to determine the right timing for your reinvention is to have an honest talk about your budget. How much do you need to live on? How much can you put away towards your goal? Are you being honest about your financial situation? Don't think only about your short-term needs. Think long-term, big picture. How long would it take to get that new boat, or to visit Italy, or take a 6-month sabbatical? In my experience, you may be surprised how doable a reinvention can be. So if money were no object, what would you be doing with your life? Your answer is a good measure of where you are now and where you want to be. I'm going to leave you with that for the moment. And I'm really excited to introduce Rebecca to all of you today, because Rebecca has a really interesting perspective and take on how we can shift that in our lives. And she's here to talk to us about that. So welcome, Rebecca. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Kathi. I'm so glad to be here with you. I love this book. I love this chapter. I'm eager to talk about all of it.
Fantastic. So let me share a little bit about you for those who don't know Rebecca. She's an amplifier of love and catalyst for breakthroughs. She shares her gifts as a transformational hypnotist and money mindset coach committed to helping visionary women live their truth, step into the divine purpose, and create the life of their dreams. Over the last 17 years, she's helped thousands of clients to release old blocks, traumas, loss, and hidden fears to find a deeper sense of self-worth and determination to live life on their own terms. Using that self-worth and determination as fuel to create the life they've been dreaming of with deeper connection, more joy, more impact, wealth, and more fun. Rebecca's clients include spiritual entrepreneurs, coaches, healers, executives, entertainers, and influencers, women who have a message to share with the world. So, Rebecca, I am excited to have this conversation with you today. And I really want to actually start out by saying, by asking you, how did you get into this business? What was it that triggered for you in parts of your life, and maybe speak to some of your early stage career moves and where you were at that helped you focus in on this part of your life? And you bring, what I love is the spirituality to what is considered the practical notion of money. And usually we don't look at those two together. And yet when we really are in tune with ourselves, we have the energy and the ability to manifest what we want. And,
Yes.
you know, whether it's money or what money brings us in terms of success or happiness or goals, I think is where people kind of get hung up. So really excited to hear a little bit of, you know, what kind of got you to this place doing this kind of work and helping people this way.
I think of that symbol on the on the cover of your book. That's all the winding twists and turns and all of that. That's the story of my life, like most people, right? And I had an experience in my life very early on in high school where someone that I care deeply about was hurt. She was assaulted, and we ended up in therapy and, you know, trying to deal with these things, the shock and the pain and all of that. And I felt like there had to be a better way than the way things were going, because it was going horribly. We were all suffering so much. And that started me on the path of wanting to help people, I've been a helper my whole life. You know how it is. You start to have these tendencies when you're little. And I just wanted to make people feel better. That was my feeling back then. And I ended up going to work in corporate banking, which is very, very different from where I am right now.
Right.
And I was at a job that I really didn't like very much. Didn't like it from the first day, but I met a dear, dear friend there who watched a movie about hypnosis and said, I know your background is in helping people and psychology and, you know, health psychology and all of that. I think you'd really be interested in this. I think this would be something good for you. And at the time I was dealing with really pretty moderate case of social anxiety, where I was hiding out in my life. And so it was not in my character to say, okay, but I said, very strained, sure, I'd love to learn about it. Find us a good teacher and let's go take this class together. And then he ditched me. And I had to go by myself. And it was very uncharacteristic of me to do those things by myself at the time. And hypnosis opened up a whole new world for me, because it helped me heal the social anxiety that I was feeling. It helped me find my self-worth and my confidence. And then all of that continued to grow over time. And then getting into the business of, you know, having a practice of hypnosis and working with helping people to release anxiety, panic, that kind of thing, and really help them find their true north and come home to themselves, because that's where the true north is, right?
Right.
And then I started just naturally, because I'm a female entrepreneur, finding other people in that circle, and they became my clients. And then it developed into this thing that most entrepreneurs discover, that when you start off on your career, you realize very quickly that you are the only thing standing between you and your dreams. And so a lot of the conversations became about money and worthiness and all of that. So it just kind of has gone, now I'm in my 17th year. So it's a big, long and winding road, but
That's amazing.
yeah, I'm really happy with where this is.
So
Yeah.
fear tends to play into a lot of the process that stops people from, you said you kind of, it wasn't your proclivity to go to this thing, and yet
Right.
you did. But throughout your journey, and I know we talked a lot about where and how fear shows up in people's lives and the impact that it has. Maybe share a little bit about your perspective, not only what you dealt with, but how you deal with clients and a lot of the people that you deal with in this space, because it's really something that I think stops people dead in their tracks. And they may not realize what they're fearful of and what the opportunity is if one can get past that.
Right.
Can you speak a little bit to that?
Absolutely. So as you said earlier, I'm an amplifier of love. And I believe that our emotions and reactions come from one of two places: fear and love. There are only two, and they come in all different kinds of outfits, but you can really drill it down to the fact that you're either operating from a place of fear or you're operating from love. And when we're operating from love, or when we're operating from fear, it's our ego trying to keep our perceived self safe. It's a bit of a tongue twister, but it really just wants us to stay right where we are, safe, surviving,
Yeah.
and not moving, not changing, because the brain really loves the same. So if we're trying to stretch a little bit, we're trying to do something big or bold, our brain will come up with all sorts of activity that will tell us, hey, you're not really as smart as you think you are. I don't know if you can do this. I don't know. If you get there and you succeed, then what will happen? Can you handle that? It'll come up in all sorts of different ways, and it'll usually not feel very good in our body when it's happening. So that's a telltale sign. If there's tension with your thoughts, if there's tightness, if your stomach starts churning, if you start to get a headache, that's not operating from love, right? It's usually operating from that fear place, because our body, the ego, the mind, the brain will all get us all worked up in our body, so that we'll stop doing whatever we are trying to do, because our brain believes it to be safer to stay the same.
So how do we get past that? Because we may understand that, we may know that, but how, is it risk reward? I mean, I often talk to people about taking baby steps, that if you
Yeah.
just do one tiny little thing and you see that the risk that you thought was there, the fear that you had wasn't really there,
Right.
and then you reward yourself, or what you accomplished in that baby step may be the reward in and of itself. Is that the methodology to, take those larger leaps, but do it in baby steps? Are there mechanisms or triggers that we can kind of use to play tricks on our own mind to sort of change that emotional state? I mean, what do you sort of recommend that we try to do?
I love all of that. And I like to start with paying attention to yourself, building a relationship with yourself, paying attention to what your thoughts are. And this is a big one: releasing judgment of the thoughts. Whatever the thoughts are, if we start attaching judgments to them, well, that's a bad thought, or that's a horrible thought, or you're never going to get anywhere, you're such a loser. If we start attaching to those thoughts, then we cement them into place. But if we start to notice the thoughts, notice the feelings in our body, then we release the judgment, because we're having 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day. It's a lot of thoughts. There's a lot going through our mind at any given time. And when we add that judgment, there's just another layer of gunk that we've got to work through.
Right.
And so if we can start by noticing our thoughts, just kind of leaning back and noticing before we react to them, paying attention to the thoughts. Is this thought leading me closer to my desire, or is it taking me further away from my desire? And then is love speaking that thought to me, or is fear speaking that thought to me?
Right.
Right. And then when we know that, we're developing a beautiful relationship with ourselves and our mind, and we're releasing that judgment. So it gets to be a really loving relationship. And B, we take that and then we can apply, okay, if this thought is pulling me further away from my goal, what could I start to think right now that would move me closer? And then along with that, what's the action that I can take that will match that thought and will move me closer?
Yeah.
And so that combined with those baby steps that you're mentioning is so powerful, because for some people, the idea of reinvention is scary as heck, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's a
Like,
big word. It doesn't just have a lot of syllables, but it does.
Yes.
It triggers. And I often say to people, look, it could be a 5-minute reinvention. It might be that tiny decision, to cut gluten out of your diet because it'll be
Right.
healthier for you. Not the, oh my God, I'm going on a diet and I'm never going to be able to eat again. But
Right.
what if I just didn't eat bread for a week? Like those little things. And I think, we allow these moments to play tricks on us. And
Oh, yeah.
so, I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we're talking about, just some action, it is very possible. And for many people, this is the case because we've tried and we've tried and we tried to do things over and over and over again. But we don't get as far as we want because we're operating from the same mind that created the fear.
Right.
Pulling ourselves, nudging ourselves, encouraging ourselves to get into this place of what's a thought I can choose instead. Let's it be a really loving act and a really beautiful relationship build with the self. And you start to see yourself in a new way. You start to change your self-image by thinking these different kinds of thoughts. Because the way that we think now is all just a series of beliefs that one time we thought at one time, we thought that thought one time, and then we thought it again and again and again, and pretty soon it became a belief.
Right.
And we can do the same. And I appreciate that your question was about the action, because you, to me, feel like a really action-oriented person. Like you got to that place
Right.
somehow in your life, right?
Right.
Maybe as a survival tactic, maybe as I had to do this to keep up with what else was going on.
Can we do a
And for
therapy
many-
session right now? Because I'd like to dig into that.
I love it.
Yeah.
But there's so many people who don't even get to the action.
Yeah,
That it
you're
really
right.
does have to be the thoughts and then the baby steps.
No, I love
And then,
that. Yeah.
and then allowing, like you mentioned, to feel that success in the baby step. Like for someone who's really struggling to communicate, or to maybe they're struggling in their love life and they have had difficulty trusting because things have happened in their lives that they lost their trust in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
starting to trust themselves, to think about what they really want, what kind of relationship they really want, and making decisions about that.
Yeah.
That's the first act of trust. And then you rebuild that trust in yourself.
Right.
Then you can start to trust other people, because you're actually trusting yourself to handle whatever the outcome is.
Right.
Then I can have a conversation. Then I can ask someone out on a date. Then maybe I can take it to the next level after a little while, and so on and so on.
Right.
It's a building process.
Yeah. And I love that you're emphasizing that, because I think it is daunting. You said, reinvention is a big word. And, we just kind of touched on, those daunting moments where you make a commitment or a decision to do something. And I'm sure that most people are paralyzed by that thought. They're paralyzed by the idea that, they're going to take something on and they don't even know how to tackle it, how to approach it, how to get through their own personal judgments or their fears around it. And then they just abandon the whole idea. And then they wake up 5 years later going, well, I just couldn't, as opposed to just figuring out or sort of working through that process. And, I know we want to connect a lot of this back to the subject and the topic of money. And as I said, the chapter heading, if it weren't for money, I would blank.
Right.
Money, unfortunately, plays a role in our lives, and however we relate to money and what our relationship is to it, at a very basic level, survival for the most part in this day and age for all of us includes some degree of money.
Right.
It doesn't have to be wealth, but it's like we need a roof over our head. We need to put food in our mouths. And yeah, we could live in a jungle and live in a hut made of the bamboo trees and pick berries out of the bushes. I don't think any of us here are really living in that space at the moment. So I think that it's really important to really figure out, how do we connect with money in a more significant way, right? And how do we change our relationship to it to create more of it? How do we not live in a very limited mindset about the importance of it? So this is an area that you deal with a lot,
Yes.
an area where I know you shared that you have these incredible exercises, the 8 money mindset shifts. Let's talk a bit about this subject, because it's clearly an important issue for many of us in one way or another.
And it's all related.
Yeah.
It's all related. Even those people who are taking action or not taking action, they can be on any part of the success continuum, right? They could be just starting out. They could be someone who's been in their career and wanting to ask for the promotion. The person who has their own business, or the person who wants to start their own business, they want to reach a new height, and something is keeping them stuck where they are. And often it's belief about money. And to start to acknowledge our beliefs about money, we have to really pay attention to how we're thinking about money. Because the first thing that we say about money is a huge clue, right? Like, oh, I don't need a lot of money. I mean, I think that, wealthy people are kind of jerky sometimes, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's a huge clue as to how we might feel about money. We might have a limiting belief that you have to be a bad person to get a lot of money. Sometimes the evil villain in movies is portrayed as someone who's very, very wealthy and has the means to control a lot of
and wealthy
things.
And not a good person, right?
Right. And that's such an outdated thing, because I think we're discovering more and more that money doesn't matter. You're either a jerk or you're not. And if you have money, it amplifies whoever you are. So it isn't, that's just like one piece of many, many different beliefs that can hold us back, are whether or not we believe that we're allowed to have money. Some people believe that you shouldn't have anything, and that you'll be more taken care of in heaven if you live a poor life, right? Some people think that you work so hard and you ask for so little, that is the way, that is the pathway to a good life. Some people feel like that their success, they don't want it to be hinging on the amount of money in their bank account, but they have all of these dreams that actually take money. They have desires of giving and philanthropy and all these big plans to help other people, but they're not willing to let themselves be the receiver of the money. And so when we start to think about how we're being held back and what thoughts are coming up, this is a really intimate relationship with ourselves. When we're starting to pay attention to what thoughts are coming up as we're trying to stretch, how are we stopping ourselves over and over and over again? Like, what's this next step that I'm supposed to take, but I'm not taking it? What do I think about it? What are the thoughts that are coming up? Because when we start to acknowledge those thoughts, then we can really see where the limitations are.
Right.
Because fear is not the enemy.
Well, and fear can be a catalyst, right?
Absolutely. It can be a compass to where our limits are.
Yeah.
And when we acknowledge, okay, I have a fear here that if I ask for a lot of money in my business and I charge higher rates and I employ a lot of people, that my family's going to see me as somebody I'm not, or the friends that I've had will kind of step away from me.
Right.
And they won't be as involved because they'll think I'm all about money because I'm asking for more money, more of an investment in my business. Then we know from that there's an underlying thought that I really care maybe a little too much about what people care about me. And I don't want to be rejected. I have this fear of rejection. I have this fear of being abandoned by people.
Right.
And the mind doesn't want us to be abandoned. The brain doesn't want us to be abandoned because that's unsafe.
Yep.
Most likely when we're abandoned, we're not okay, right?
Right.
It seems as if that's the way it will feel. But in reality, we know that we've grown and we continue to grow and learn. So we know that those ideas and those fears are from the ego place. They're not from our higher self and the part of us that's pulling us into our
And I'm sure a lot of us don't even understand that we're doing that. It's like self-sabotage. We don't even realize that we're doing it. You know, I'll sit here going, oh, no, 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 no. I love money and I have no problem asking for the amount of money that I think I'm worth, my company's worth, my team is worth, our time is worth. But do I really? Am I really?
Right.
You know, am I too quick to say, oh, you're having a hard time, you can't pay us as much as you should, fine. Or do we hold our ground and say, I'm so sorry, but if you can't afford the Rolls Royce, I ain't giving it to you at a Volkswagen price. You know, what is our proclivity when those moments show up? Do we kind of become very empathetic to the other person that is trying to perhaps pay us less money for our services? Or do we hold our ground and say, I'm so sorry that you're not in a position to be able to afford that. I need to move on. And if things change in your circumstances, be sure to call me. And that's not easy for a lot of people to do.
Right.
Sometimes it takes time to get to a place where you have a comfort to not only think that way, let alone have that voice to express that, because now are you a bad person that you're not willing to be flexible and meet them halfway? Or, you know, like, these are all the issues. And I think, you know, I'm speaking from a consultant, business owner point of view, where this is an ongoing conversation. So that's not unusual. You know, women in particular, I think, need to have a voice that they've not always been confident in having. If we're going out for a job, are we willing to accept a job at a, you know, a salary that perhaps is less than what we were hoping, or what we need, or what we would like, or what we know we are worth? You know, at what point do you start to understand your true value? And that doesn't mean you're greedy, and it doesn't mean you're difficult, and it doesn't mean you're bossy. It just means that you do understand your worth, and it's time to be able to have that voice and project that.
Absolutely. Right? Yes.
So how does one, you know, I'm going to go back to kind of like the actionable steps, if you will. Are there a couple of things that help us get our mind right, that help us get our soul feeling right, when we are that person that has that fear, that challenge, that inability to find that inner voice, or that lack of ability to understand our value? How do we start to morph it? And if I may, I think I'm going to go back to something you said in the beginning, which is our thoughts. What would it be like if we thought for one moment, like, try it on? I often say in my book, try it on for size. You know, try it, put on those rose-colored glasses, and for 10 minutes, just pretend you're that person as opposed to who you are all the time, and try that on and see how that feels. But I think our thoughts kind of play that role, right? So I'm going to sort of let you answer the question that I keep talking over.
Absolutely. You know, trying it on, I think, is really powerful, because we often think of the next goal. You know, if I get to that next goal, then what? And rather than thinking of it in such a way, who do I get to become to reach that goal and beyond? Who do I get to be? What would a person who has the thing that I want, whether, and I like to talk in wealth and abundance in all forms, you know, love, romance, connection, you know, joy and fulfillment, and lots of money too. all really being open to receiving all of that. What would the person that feels that way and has the things that I want, what would she feel like? What kind of thoughts would she think? Would she think,
create
oh,
that avatar?
yes, really create that for yourself and start thinking those thoughts. And if you're noticing that there's any negativity coming up about who you might think you will become, that's a place for you to work, a place for you to look at those thoughts like, oh, well, she might be a little stingy about, changing her rates at her job or, with her clients, or, she might have higher standards. There's two ways of looking at it, right? Like she might say no to everybody who asks for a discount. She might say, I'm going to use my discernment, and the person who I know really, really wants it and they can't pay for it, they get a scholarship and they get to pay it forward or something like that, where we don't have to become wobbly in our standards to get what we want. We get to live in our standards, to know what it is that we want and to be that person now.
Yeah.
Because when we start to be that person now and we start to create that certainty about what we want, that stuff starts showing up very quickly.
And we magnetize it to ourselves.
Right. It's almost as if we can collapse time because we have so much certainty that we're not wading through all of the BS of, I don't really know, or I'm not quite sure. And then when we get into that place of really discovering, this is how this version of me will feel. If something keeps coming up that's negative, and it's holding you back, it's the thought that keeps spinning and it's pulling you further away from that goal, then I inject tools like EFT, emotional freedom technique, journaling, meditation, practicing those things in such a way that they really help you release judgment of yourself. Because the more judgment you release, the more place of love that you're in, the more place of self-authority, the more place of certainty, the more place of trust and worthiness and value. Getting goosebumps.
I know, right? No, it's very powerful. And what about the hypnotism piece of your work? Where and how does that sort of play a role in all of this?
When someone wants to work with me one-on-one, what I do is help them to heal the experiences that have created these limiting beliefs, that have created anxiety. And some people start to build an identity around anxiety or rage or disconnection, that they don't trust people. And when we can, in this beautiful place in hypnosis, which we're creating hypnosis for ourselves all the time. I can't create it for you. I can guide you into it. But it's not this unknown place. It's a really natural state of being where we're very focused and very concentrated on our emotions and paying attention to what's happening inside of ourselves more so than everything that's happening on the outside. Mm-hmm. And we can look at those past experiences where things shifted into a place that didn't feel good. Right. We can go back and actually neutralize the feelings of that experience and make that a moment of understanding and learning and acceptance and even forgiveness at times.
Right.
Then, because we're operating all the time from the past, which is so counterproductive, right? Where every time we want to make a move, we have this huge wave of emotion that comes from things that are unsettled in our past. Like, don't do this, don't do that, move forward, don't move forward, all trying to keep us safe because that's what worked in the past. Yeah. And when we heal those experiences that cause those big emotions, then we get to be in the present more because that disconnects. It breaks the connection between the event and our physical, emotional, and behavioral response. Right. So we get to be right here in the present more. Because the present, deciding everything from the present is where the magic is at. Because we get to see right here who we are, what we're doing, what we're feeling, and we move forward from here instead of making decisions from those emotions from the past. Right. Because all that does is just pull us back or keep us stuck rutting in the same place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd love to open up the floor to some questions. I have a feeling we've got a couple of friends here today who would love to dig into this conversation a little bit. And I really appreciate you being here. I know that Ronnie has to pop off, so thanks for the notice, Ronnie. Love seeing you.
Okay. Nice to see you.
But if anybody's got any questions, I want to leave enough time just to dig into those a little bit. And before we do, Rebecca, is there anything else that you just want to make a point of sharing about the work you do, about, you know, the impact that the last year and a half has had on people? Are we seeing, you know, a shift in consciousness, the way people are becoming more reflective, becoming more challenged or fearful of where, you know, they're at right now in their relationship to money? Is there anything else, you know, that you're just observing about, you know, where we are and what we could be doing for ourselves better at the moment?
We can always inject more love. I think the pandemic has made us, what I've witnessed anyway, more of who we were. So if we were really stuck before, it deepened that stuckness often, because it's really hard to move when there's so much stress,
Right.
so much pressure. And we have all this time by ourselves, and many people are longing for really good connection anyway, and now needing to be apart from one another more, you know, the inability to travel, or to at least making it more complicated, that, you know, some of us really got into a place of just pulling back.
Yep.
And it's natural. I mean, we've been through a lot. Being in a pandemic, nobody's done it before. You know, most of us haven't done it before, right?
Right.
And to be able to be really loving with ourselves and to notice where we're stopping ourselves, where we're holding back.
Right.
If we're succeeding really a lot in business, there might be another area of our life that maybe our relationships aren't as great. If our relationships are really strong, we may have had to let something else go in our business to try to maintain the energy of the last year.
Right.
And everybody has dealt with this in some way. And to acknowledge that everybody's got their own thing, their own, you know, we're all kind of in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. You know, it's a little bit, it's really
that's
acknowledging.
a great way to put it. I love that.
Yeah, that it's, our lives are not all the same because this is happening.
Yeah.
And we get to acknowledge where we are and move forward from there without that judgment. That darn judgment is such a stinker.
Yeah, and it's I love that you were able to focus on so much of that in this conversation, because I think a lot of us don't realize that that is what we're doing, and being mindful of it is such an important first step in connecting the dots and where this all kind of shows up and has impact.
Yes.
So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So anybody have a question? Anybody want to share any thoughts around this conversation? Josh, go for it. You can unmute your phone. There you go.
Hello.
Hi, Josh.
Hi, Josh.
Hey, Rebecca, how you doing?
Good.
She's
so
pretty
basically
special,
like,
right, Josh?
Huh?
I said she's pretty special, huh?
Nah, Becca's cool. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, you know, as Becca was talking, it was kind of like, you know, cause like it was basically like making me think about, you know, those times when it's like, all right, do you feed the good wolf or do you feed the bad wolf? You know,
Right.
and sometimes like traumatic experiences and stuff like that, they just be like so heavy that it's like honestly like you don't be wanting to be nice to nobody no more, you know? And then, you know, when you get to like a certain point in your life and then you're just like, yo, what the fuck? Like, excuse me, like, why am I being so nice? Like, you know? So it was just kind of like that. And then, you know, it just was really making me really reflect, like, you know, like you usually do. Like, I don't know, you know, because like I understand what Becca's saying, but it's just, yeah, it's just really like sometimes like overcoming those moments to really be like, you know what, am I gonna let this one slide? You know, probably a
Right.
control thing or something, I don't know.
Oh,
But I
you
understand, you
nailed
know,
it.
what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you nailed it with the control piece. Because if we've been through lots of trauma, it's so easy for us to take on that hyper controlling thing because it sucks to be hurt. It's painful
it's
to
why.
be overlooked. It's painful to be hurt. And we can start to feel this intense anger because sometimes in our trauma, in our pain, we feel like nobody understands us. And what I felt,
because they're not. Yeah, Becca, because they thinking it's anger, but it's really passion. It's really fire. And if they just use that fire to light their ass and do something right, yeah. Yo, my bad. But if they, if they use that fire, you know what I mean, it's really going to take them to where they want to be at, because, it's that fire and that passion is what drives things. Sorry about that, everybody.
the passion is a powerful thing. And you were speaking to something really important earlier, and you brought up the anger, like, how am I I'm carrying around this anger for the pain of the past. And I think a big piece of that is to really acknowledge that no one will ever get what you went through because you're the one who went through it. And you get to like pour so much love and compassion into yourself. And that little boy or little girl who you were at that time needs that love, so much love, because you were overlooked or you're forgotten or you were hurt and nobody got it.
Right.
And when we don't feel validated, the anger can really start to boil.
Yeah.
And so we can validate ourselves. Like, Josh, you deserve to feel that love for yourself, that deep love for yourself, right?
It's true. No, it's true. Because it's honestly, it's like at the end of the day, after everybody, pooped on you and stuff like that, it's like, yo, now it's like, and that's why I'm saying it kind of goes back to like the intelligence, because it's like if you're not turning that energy like inside and going forward and improving yourself, actually just doing the work to prove everybody else wrong, then you're doing the wrong thing if you're not doing that. You know what I'm saying? So that's how you gotta like kind of transmute it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And just turn it inside and just say, hey, listen, I love myself now. Forget everybody. But I'm pretty much at that point. That's why I'm saying F everybody. Like, you know what I mean? But it's a good F. All right, I'm done.
You get to that transmute word is a really powerful one. Transmuting that feeling from anger into acceptance moves you into love. Transmuting is the shifting of the energy. That's completely beautiful thing. And then that can turn that anger into passion, anger into connection for your mission, your purpose, your vision for your life. And that's a transmute is the same as reinvention, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. It's not a word that I hear come up very often, and yet it really is such an incredibly aligned word, because you're not, and again, you pointed to the doodle on the cover of my book, which is we are always the same human, but in different states and forms. And we're constantly going back between moments of clarity, months of clarity, years of clarity, to and from the messy, the gray, the trying to figure it out. And that's who we are as human beings.
Right.
And yet we are that same person, that same piece of thread. We're just in different forms of ourselves. And so reinvention, transmuting, these are different states of ourselves and our ability. I'm a big believer that we reinvent in order to constantly add more to our plate, more to fill our cup, more in our lives, to be curious, to build on everything. And some people reinvent to escape something that they're doing, to get away from something and try something anew. So there's so many ways that we interpret it, and it is a very personal thing based on who we are, what we're seeking, where we're at in life, what we want. But I think what's important is that we understand that we are entitled to live the life that we want. We are each the center of
Mhm.
our own universe. And Sally, I see you've unmuted, so I'm going to stop talking because if you want to ask a
Oh,
question.
no, but you say fabulous things.
Yes, she does.
I
But
just have to
Sally,
say
yeah,
very
go
quickly
for it. Yeah,
that
please.
this money thing is deeply resonant and so historical in my life that I'm not really sure that I want to talk in specifics, but I'm grateful. I'm not sure about what was it? The hypnosis.
Hypnosis.
I'm not sure about that, but the things that you've said, they're enormously helpful and informative. And I've reached out to you on LinkedIn, and
Oh, beautiful.
yes, it's the money thing goes back a really long. You have no
Yeah.
idea. You have no idea.
I'm guessing it goes back even to when you were 0 to 3 years old. So that's when a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
our
well, it
patterns
goes
start.
back to my parents and
Yeah.
inheritance that I'm not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, that's okay.
And
Well,
I
yeah.
don't
I was
think that
gonna
I
s-
always understand how in perhaps semi-conscious ways I accepted certain ideas about myself or
Yeah.
my family or whatever. I'm so grateful for this. You have no idea. I'm still completely screwed up, but
Welcome to
Aren't
being
we all?
human.
No, like, aren't we all somehow?
but we can talk.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, I'm glad that you are making that connection with one another. And that's why when I was approached about Rebecca being on this show and in this conversation, I know that this is such it's an important thing that a lot of people actually don't like to talk about. And, they all say that, women don't like to talk about money and it's really important. It's not just women. It's everybody. Money is a hard topic. It's a hard topic, whether you got it, whether you don't got it, whether you're trying to make it, whether you're trying to earn it, whether you're, trying to figure out how to spend it. Money is just one of those topics that you can never massage enough different ways. And when you understand the connection that we have, and I was told very early on in my life, especially as an entrepreneur and someone who was building a business, who was a young woman, and I didn't know that it wasn't my right to not ask for what I was worth. I always just knew that these were the fees I was going to charge, and I know how hard I work and I've got a voice. So I had no issue with any of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen it happening swirling around me. I have mentored so many women over the years to help them find that voice and understand the empowerment of owning your value and understanding your self-worth as it relates to money. And I think it's really important that we never stop having these conversations and we understand the connection to our thoughts and the feeling of abundance in our lives and all that you spoke to. So I'm so appreciative, Rebecca, of what what you've just sort of started to just crack open for so many people that are listening in, that will tune in, that will continue to share this episode with, because I think it's a powerful and important conversation that most people don't seek out. And it's conversations like these that enable people to know, hey, there's somebody that understands what I don't understand. That may help me figure out, and I always say it's the questions that you don't know to ask that you don't know to ask. So having conversations, hearing things that resonate for us and with us in some way, hopefully will bring people out of the woodworks, whether it's for them to do their own self-work, whether it's to reach out to you, whether it's to, have conversations with others and just find their voice around this topic.
Absolutely. I think it's so powerful. You mentioned a few times knowing your worth. And sometimes it's a hard concept for people to really gather. But what you bring to the table is just like the tip of the iceberg to your true value. You know, many people tie our work and our productivity and the transformation that we bring, and you're valuable just because you exist. And then all that other stuff you get to add on to it,
True.
you know, and
So well
then
said.
charging
Yeah.
what you're worth, and charging, you know, if you're an entrepreneur or a healer or practitioner, or you offer some kind of service, charging what the transformation is worth. And let's not forget what the client actually needs to invest to make the transformation.
Right. Absolutely.
That's a huge piece that we often don't even get to talk about, because there's so many points of this to talk about.
Yeah.
So I love that we're having this conversation. And I hope that everybody who's listening has a conversation with their friend about it. What can we do to feel safer with money? What can we do to empower ourselves to receive more?
Mm-hmm.
To get it in legal and ethical ways too, right? But to receive more and be open to all the abundance that we can, true fulfillment and connection and joy and all of the things that can go hand in hand with opening yourself up to more love and abundance.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I almost don't want to say anything after what you just said.
Okay.
I feel like I need to end it right there. I do, however, have one tiny little end of this chapter that I'm just going to read, just to bring
Please.
us full circle. Reinvention does not have to be a financial goal or challenge. It can be powered by a dream and the sheer will to achieve it. How you get there, whether it's trading houses, saving money for 10 years, volunteering, taking up a hobby in your spare time, doesn't entirely matter. What matters is figuring out how to fulfill your dreams and achieve the reinvented life you aspire to.
Oh yeah, so good.
And that's in the money topic, the money chapter. So I feel like our combination of perspective and expertise and insights just brings so much richness to this conversation. And Rebecca, I'm really grateful for you being here today on the Reinvention Virtual Chat. Josh, Sally, everybody else that was on here that is tuning in from wherever you are at any point when you're listening. I'm glad you've had a chance to spend this time with us. And I want to thank you all. This will be posted on the Reinvention Exchange on the virtual chat tabs within the next couple of days. And you are welcome to share the link with anybody else that you think might benefit from connecting with myself and Rebecca. And Rebecca's website is, hang on, I had it up here a moment ago, is
Oh, there's one in here that is not me.
yeah, that one that says Marlowe's. I think
Okay.
Xenia mistakenly does Marlowe's website instead of Rebecca's, but I thought I saw Rebecca's a moment ago, but wealthywomanresources.com.
Yeah, you can find me there.
For anybody listening, driving, and maybe not paying attention to what they're seeing, but we have a link in all of our social media as well. So you can reach out to Rebecca, as Sally did, on her LinkedIn page. And I am so grateful for you being here. Just to reiterate, we will not be having a virtual chat session next Tuesday. I will be traveling. But we will post it and put it in newsletters to remind anybody and everybody just not to come next Tuesday, but then we'll be right back the week after. And Rebecca, thank you again for your time, for your wisdom, for your beauty, for sharing all of you with us today. I really appreciate it. Lovely to be connected and meet you and know you. And I'm looking forward to more conversations and having you back anytime you want to pop in.
Oh, I love that.
Thank
you, Kathy, so much for your generous spirit. I appreciate it.
Hey, Rebecca, be ready to hypnotize somebody too next time.
All right.
Just kidding. It was great.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Happy reinventing and have an amazing week.